Before watching this video, just think one really important question. Do you really need another watch? And then maybe a second question. Do you have like $200? And maybe you want a diving watch? Maybe you want it to be blue, but only with quality and materials and looks? I'm just saying. Stay tuned. Hey there, you've somehow found yourself at the nick of time. Your source for value-priced watch reviews, along with the occasional, climbing of the ladder on some nicer pieces that we can drool over, try and chase down, and dream that we can one day afford. But today on the wrist, and in this video, we're going to do a review for the Orient Kamasu, which is a watch, if you save your pennies, if you spend wisely, if you have under $200, you can buy. And it's from Japan. And it's from a sister brand of Seiko. Now, Orient is actually owned by the Epson company. Yes, the people that brought you a printer or two, or other weird devices you've plugged into your computer with a USB port over the years. Epson also owns Seiko. So Orient's actually an independent brand from Seiko. Seiko doesn't own Orient or vice versa. And what's also interesting is Orient makes their own movements unique of Seiko as well. And the Kamasu is sort of their premium dive watch. And by premium, I mean the thing that keeps you at $200 or less. There are Makos and some other ones that are in a lower price range, but what makes the Kamasu so great is the specs. And we'll get to more details, but a lot of it has to do with this sapphire crystal display. For me, I'm a mess. I'm a hot mess. I'm all gangly limbs, and if I'm not careful, I will crash watches into all sorts of stuff. And early on in my watch career, when I owned things like, Skagans and Fossils and things like that years and years ago, they didn't last either because the battery died and I couldn't figure out how to get the back off and where to buy a battery where I lived, or more often where I would just scuff and scratch the heck out of their mineral crystal displays. The glass that really wasn't a really, scratch resistant quality it claims to be, but sapphire crystal is really what you need if you want to have a durable watch face that isn't going to just look really tattered well before its time. And so when I looked at the specs of this watch when it came out, and then when I went online and watched so many reviews, and everybody said Kamasu, 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 for a low price diver, under $500, under $300, under $200, everyone seemed to agree that the Orient Kamasu was where I should start and take a look. And so in fact, I have. And not to spoil the rest of the video here, and before I do, stay there, right there, don't go anywhere. Click the subscribe button, click the little bell, throw a comment down below, maybe one of those thumbs up. Be great, really help the channel as we're expanding, growing, and trying to build an audience here. Much appreciated. Back to my thoughts though. They were right. This is a quality watch, whether it's the brilliant deep blue sunbursted finish on the dial, that sapphire crystal display, a band that feels not sharp on the edges. Overall, the weight of it feels right, the size of it, the guards around the crown, everything together just is a wonderful combination. And I was happily surprised, in spite of everyone else saying that this was in fact the truth, that, well, this was in fact the truth. Now let's take a closer look at the Kamasu. It's made of 316L stainless steel. It has a stainless steel bezel, so it's not ceramic, but it's a stainless steel painted blue bezel. 120 unidirectional bezel clicks. It's a 41.8 millimeter case diameter. Has a 47 millimeter lug-to-lug measurement. Has 12.8 millimeter case thickness. The band starts at 22 millimeters and tapers down to around 11.2 millimeters and then back up to 14 millimeters at the buckle. It's got that sapphire crystal display. And the screw-off back has a lightly etched dolphin rendition, and that Epson logo is sort of prominent on the back, reminding you that they're the parent of both Seiko and Orient. The movement on this watch is Epson and Orient's own F6922 movement. It's a 22 jewel hacking movement with a day and date complication on the face. It has a 40-hour power reserve. Those day and date complications are activated by a screw-down crown, which has a really well-sized guard. The action of setting the time and the movement of the crown is very smooth action, and overall just feels quality. Let's talk about the loom. The Kamasu has loom on the minute, hour, and second hands, as well as the hour markers on the dial. If you look here as we bring out the lights here, you can see that the loom glow is still very, very strong. It's impressive overall, and many hours for the human eye to be able to see overall. It's not quite as crazy as some of the Seiko divers that I've seen, or even some of the much more expensive watches like my Laco pilot's watch. But overall, it is still a very vibrant, very usable bit of loom to carry through into the night when things get dark. We talked about the finishing of this watch. It's very impressive how they made it a completely polished edges on the top, around, and even the edges of that bezel are all nicely polished and kind of rolled over there. The back of the watch as well is also polished, so you don't really get a lot of the brush steel that you often see in watches in this price range, or actually in any price range. Kind of gives it a feeling of smoothness and of quality when you put it on your wrist. That's impressive and kind of steps above its weight class. We take a look at the band on the Kamasu. It's a very nice linked band, closed end links. It's a pin and collar type design. One of the negatives, it is a pressed clasp, but it makes up for that with having 4 different notches for micro size quick adjustment. And I'm able to get this thing to fit my wrist just perfectly, which makes it quite easy. Overall, though, the feeling of the ends and the way that the edges of the end links are just polished and rolled ever so slightly to not feel sharp, it's really impressive. And I haven't worn this watch in a few days, and I've been wearing actually a San Martin and a Pagani. And relative to those two, this watch feels much more upmarket with how its band feels. And oftentimes a less expensive watch, the band is what gives away a lot. Now, let me tell you, when I first got this watch, I was not originally sold by the dial. In the house, it's kind of a dark blue. It doesn't really pop. It's not huge and lustrous. It's deep there, but it wasn't until I went outside and got it in the light and kind of moved around that I was able to see just how deep and impressive and what a luster that it had. It was just, it really spoke to me at that point. I was like, oh, I really understand this watch. For the other negative on it that I had, I'm not sure that I'm the biggest fan of how the edge of the dial is kind of rolled with little indents. It's very neat that on the 5s there's an indent there, and it's not your classic sub clone or your Black Bay 58 clone or even some of your early Seiko clones. It does its own thing there. And at times I like it, and at times, and I'm sorry when saying this because I don't want to ruin it for you, but it sort of reminds me of that cheap tinfoil that's on the top of cheap champagne. When you pull off before you do that, it has the divots from where the top of the champagne tightens down. And it took me a long time to realize that that's what it reminds me of. So it's a champagne bottle tinfoil crown look. I'm sure that's not what the designer was going for, but it's, once I noticed that, it was like, it doesn't ruin the watch. It doesn't make it a complete game changer or not. It's just, it's something that makes it unique that maybe isn't my favorite look. And maybe it's because I'm in love with the Black Bay 58 at the moment that I want to have that tapered right to the edge with a hard wall, or the chunkier grip sharp of like a Submariner or something like that. I'm not sure, but if I'm being honest, those are sort of the things that stuck out to me with this. Now, working on the name of the next section, but we're going to call it, let's try a strap-on. It's I don't know, we're working on it. I mean, it's a watch, so you're trying a strap-on watch. Carrying on, moving on. When I realized I was prepping this section is I only have 2 22mm bands. So here you see it on its normal band that it shipped with. And then here you see it on a 22mm NATO band that we have. It really fits it both. The NATO is super comfortable. Shocker, it's a dive watch with a NATO. Everybody does that. But it looks really, really nice. I wish I had a tan leather strap because I've seen these on a tan leather strap, and they also just look kind of cool, and it brings it up market for going out night or something more formal than swimming 100 meters deep in your pool. I'm impressed by your pool, by the way. Well done. Good life goals. Now we're entering a section called the Test of Time. This is like sort of like the Doug score if you ever watch Doug DeMuro's channel on cars. And it's 6 highly subjective categories from my perspective of numerically rating the watch. And then an optional 7th if for some reason this particular watch, this design has history or something about it that really makes it a little more special, giving you a total test of time score. The first section that we measure is value. And for the Kamasu, in this price range, I have to give it a 10. And I don't give out a lot of 10s, but if you think about it, For less than $200, sapphire crystal, in-house movement, 22 joules, incredible reliability from everyone that's used the Orient movements, in a band that feels very just rolled enough over on the edges to not feel cheap or sharp. It just sits and feels great. It's earned its 10. From a rarity and exclusivity, it's not very expensive. You don't see them in stores here in the States, but overall, everybody tells you if you want to buy a diver on the cheap that has great features, buy a Kamasu. So I'm inclined to give it a 3. You're not going to win any, ooh, look at me, but people will ask when they see it, what is that? It's a nice looking watch right there. For materials, I give it a 9. There's pretty much everything you can ask for, except maybe a ceramic bezel. So I'm going to give it a 9 in this situation. For a look, I'm going to give it an 8 as well. It's a beautiful watch. It has that deep dial, and I think it garners attention and compliments wherever it goes. Likewise, for finishing, I'm going to give it an 8 as well. There's nothing stellar and outstanding, but the polishing, the detail work, and the overall look and feel of it is really good. It just doesn't have any outstanding features or details that really make it super pop. Finally, with the movement, and for the movement, I'm going to give it a 7. 7 is my standard, has an automatic movement from a trusted manufacturer. It doesn't have too many complications. There's nothing crazy there, no crazy high power reserve, no 28,800 beats movement frequency. So in this case, I think that's an earned score. The last category is special credit. In this case, I think this watch is not really earning of a special credit, so we're going to just give it a 0 there. In total, it gives the watch a 45. It's a great score. And just put an image up on the screen so you can see what other watches and previews you some of the things we have coming up and where it kind of sits relative to other watches in the price range from my admittedly completely arbitrary scale. So here's my 60-second pitch to close out this for the Orient Kamasu. It's an excellent deal, wonderful materials, a great movement, and a depth of it that as you wear it, you'll grow appreciating it more and more over time. The thing I've noticed the most actually having this and gotten in quite a few watches since then in similar price ranges is how much better the band on this watch feels on my wrist. It's got micro sizing on it to get it perfectly fit for exactly what I want. And while that band might be a press steel clasp, it still feels overall while on the wrist like the perfect thing to have there, and it just works for what I want the watch to be. You grab it, you put it on, you go. It feels like an old pair of shoes. It just works perfectly what you need. And really, from a name brand with support, with a warranty, what more can you ask for? So with that, this has been the Orient Kamasu, and this has been the Nick of Time. Thanks for coming into the first watch review we're posting on the channel. We had one video around the 11/11 sale for AliExpress. Plenty of more things to come. I'm trying to put out 2 videos a week, and hope you like it. Hope you subscribe. Hope you come along for the ride. Comment down below. Tell me what you think. Tell me what more you want to see. With that, thanks for stopping by again. Hope whatever's on the wrist makes you smile. Take care.